feeling invisible or not enough. Psalm 139 reveals how deeply God knows and values you. When you move through a room and no one lifts their eyes, something inside you quietly wonders if your presence truly matters. There are moments when even the sound of your own name feels distant, as if it belongs to someone more visible, more valued, more chosen than you. This silent question begins to echo in the heart. If I disappeared into the background, would anything change? The world can be loud and crowded, yet still leave you feeling like a faint outline rather than a full and living soul. There is a weight that forms in these hidden places, not heavy enough to break you outright, but strong enough to make you doubt the worth of your own breath. These are the moments when the heart begins to search for something deeper, something honest, something capable of reaching the part of you that longs to be seen without having to perform. And it is here, right in this sacred tension between invisibility and longing, that Psalm 139 begins to whisper a truth your spirit has needed for far too long. It speaks into the spaces no one else enters, addressing the quiet ache you rarely name out loud. It carries a reassurance that does not demand strength or perfection to be received. This journey begins with the simple yet profound invitation to question the narrative you have carried about yourself. There is a reason this psalm has offered comfort to countless hearts across centuries. It reveals a love that notices every detail, every fear, every hope, every hidden corner you assumed no one would ever care to know. And within its lines lies something capable of shifting the way you see not only God, but your own identity. Stay with this opening breath of truth. You are not here by accident. You are not unnoticed. There is a depth of recognition waiting for you, one that can reshape the very foundation of how you understand your worth. Before we step into that promise, we need to look honestly at the struggle you may be carrying right now, the weight that makes this message more than inspirational words. It becomes a lifeline. There are seasons when your heart carries a quiet exhaustion, not from work or responsibility, but from the unspoken effort of trying to be seen. You wake each day with a desire to belong, to matter, to hold a place in someone's awareness. Yet life often unfolds in ways that make you question whether anyone truly notices the battles you fight within. You give your best in conversations, in commitments, in the hidden acts of kindness that no one applauds, and still you can feel strangely transparent, like someone who moves through the world without leaving a trace. These experiences shape you more than you admit. They press against your confidence and make you second-guess your worth. It becomes even harder when the comparisons begin. You watch others receive attention, affirmation, and presence, and you wonder what it is about you that seems so easily overlooked. When you are the one who always listens, always understands, always carries the emotional weight of others, it can become painful to realize how rarely anyone asks about the heaviness you hold. This is where loneliness does its quiet work. It does not shout. It settles into the spaces where you hope someone would reach. It makes you believe that your value is measured by the recognition you receive. And if recognition is rare, then perhaps value is too. There is also a spiritual ache that forms beneath the surface. You begin to assume that if people fail to notice your presence, maybe God does too. Doubts whisper their way into your spirit, not with dramatic accusations, but with subtle questions that slowly reshape your inner landscape. You may have prayed for clarity, for comfort, for a sign that you are still held, yet felt as though the heavens remained silent. When your life feels unseen, even prayer can feel like an unanswered message. You begin to wonder if your voice blends into the background of countless other cries, each one more deserving than yours. The struggle intensifies when the world teaches you to compensate for invisibility by striving harder. You push yourself to be impressive, to appear collected, to excel in ways that might finally earn attention. Yet this striving creates a fragile kind of identity, one shaped by external reactions instead of inner truth. Every lack of response becomes a wound. Every moment of being overlooked becomes a confirmation that you are not enough. Over time, This pattern drains your emotional strength and dims your connection with the deeper truth of who you are. Even in relationships, the ache can persist. You may be surrounded by people and still feel alone. You may share space with others, yet feel disconnected, longing for someone to truly witness you without judgment. It is possible to be physically present and emotionally unseen, and this paradox can lead to a quiet grief that is difficult to articulate. You begin to hide parts of yourself to avoid further disappointment, creating a version of you that feels safer but far less alive. Yet beneath all this pain, there remains a longing that will not disappear. It is the longing to be known without having to explain yourself, to be valued without having to prove anything, to be understood beyond the surface details of your life. This longing is not weakness. It is evidence that you were created for connection, for meaning, for recognition that speaks to the soul. The ache itself is a sign that you are made for more than invisibility. This struggle is the doorway through which Psalm 139 enters. It does not dismiss your pain or pretend that feeling unseen is simple to overcome. Instead, it offers a different perspective, one that begins to dismantle the false stories you have carried for far too long. Before the psalm speaks, it invites you to acknowledge the reality of what you feel so that its message can reach the deepest places within you. To understand the depth of that message, we need to step briefly into the world from which this psalm emerged, a world where a human heart wrestled with the same longing you feel now, and found in God a recognition unlike anything the world could offer. Long before these words reached your ears, they were born from the heart of someone who also felt the tension between longing and uncertainty. Psalm 139 did not emerge from a life of ease. It rose from a soul that had walked through seasons of fear, pressure, and isolation. Its voice carries the weight of a person who knew what it meant to be misunderstood and pursued, to feel exposed in the eyes of others, yet still wonder if he was fully known in the eyes of God. This psalm reflects the inner world of a worshipper who had tasted both victory and vulnerability, confidence and trembling, belonging and loneliness. What makes it powerful is that it was shaped not by theory but by lived experience. The one who prayed these words approached God with a bold intimacy. He did not hide his turmoil. He did not soften his questions. He knew that the presence of God was not distant. It was immediate, searching, and deeply involved. In the ancient world, surrounding people placed their trust in idols that never listened and rulers who valued only power. Yet the psalmist speaks to a God who is near, attentive, and relational. This contrast is critical to feel. It means the words you are hearing were profoundly countercultural. They revealed a divine presence that broke through the fear of being forgotten. They spoke of a creator who knew the human heart with a depth that no king, friend, or companion could match. The psalmist wrote in a time when human worth was often measured by lineage, achievement, or public honor. Lives were judged by what they produced, whom they served, and how they appeared in the eyes of the community. If someone fell outside these measures, they were easily pushed to the margins. Many people lived with the constant awareness that their value was fragile. In a world like that, the idea that the God of all creation saw every detail of one's existence was revolutionary. This truth offered dignity to those who felt insignificant. It offered hope to those who feared they were unnoticed. It declared that worth did not come from the shifting judgments of society, but from a divine gaze that never wavered. Psalm 139 flows with the tone of a personal confession, something intimate and unfiltered. The psalmist begins by acknowledging that God has searched him and understood him completely. This is not the tone of a distant religious ritual. It is the voice of someone in a close relationship, someone who knows that nothing about his inner life is hidden. He understands that God sees not only his actions, but his thoughts, his motives, and his private fears. This awareness could have inspired terror, yet the psalmist expresses comfort. He recognizes that God's knowledge is not invasive, but protective. It surrounds him with a sense of being held, even when life feels unpredictable. Throughout the psalm, The writer reflects on the way God crafted his life from the very beginning. He speaks of being formed in secret, shaped with care, known long before anyone else saw his face. This reveals a profound truth. Identity does not begin with public recognition. It begins with divine intention. Long before the world assigned labels or expectations, God had already woven value into the very essence of the psalmist's being. This means that the worth he carries is anchored in something permanent. It does not shift with circumstances. It does not diminish with criticism. It remains steady because it comes from the hands of the Creator. The psalmist also acknowledges the presence of God in every place he might go. Whether he rises to the heights or sinks into the depths, whether he stands in the light or moves through the shadows, God remains close. This is more than poetic comfort. It is a declaration that no moment of invisibility, no season of confusion, no journey of fear can separate the human heart from the attention of the one who formed it. The ancient world was filled with uncertainty about whether the gods cared or even existed. Yet this psalm speaks of a God whose presence is constant, whose gaze is steady, and whose knowledge is complete. Understanding this context prepares your heart for what comes next. The psalmist is not offering idealized words. He is revealing a reality that sustained him through pressure, rejection, and solitude. He found in God a recognition deeper than the praise of crowds and more secure than the affirmation of friends. He discovered that the human soul can rest when it knows it is fully seen. This background allows the psalm to speak to you not as a distant piece of scripture, but as a living message. It carries ancient truth with present power, truth that still reaches into the places where you feel unnoticed and forgotten. Now that the world of the psalm is open before you, we can step further into its heart. Its central message holds a revelation that has the power to reshape the way you understand your identity and your place in the eyes of God. At the core of Psalm 139 lies a truth so profound and so tender that it has steadied countless hearts across generations. It begins with a declaration that reaches into the most hidden corners of your being. God has searched you and knows you. These words are not a statement of surveillance or scrutiny. They are an affirmation of intimate understanding, the kind that only love can produce. To be searched by God is to be known without fear, without masks, without the layers you have learned to build for protection. It means that nothing about you is too small, too complicated, or too wounded for His attention. This is not knowledge that destroys, it is knowledge that heals. The psalm continues by describing a God who is familiar with every movement of your life. He knows when you sit down and when you stand up. He understands your thoughts before you speak a word. He is aware of the emotions you suppress and the longings you rarely name. Even the paths you take each day, both literal and emotional, are held within His awareness. This is not the detached observation of a distant deity. It is the attentive gaze of someone who has walked with you in moments even you have forgotten. When you felt alone, when you questioned your worth, when you tried to hold yourself together without breaking, He was already present, already understanding, already near. One of the most striking parts of this psalm is the image of God placing His hand upon you. This is not the heavy hand of judgment. It is a gentle, reassuring touch that conveys presence and belonging. To imagine the hand of God resting upon your life is to understand that you are not wandering in isolation. His guidance is not cold or mechanical. It is compassionate, steady, and personal. The psalmist responds to this truth with awe, realizing that such knowledge is too wonderful and too high to fully grasp. It is the kind of wonder that moves a person from fear to trust, from striving to surrender. Then the psalm reaches into the depths of human experience by acknowledging that there is no place where God's presence cannot reach. If you ascend to the heights of joy or descend into the depths of despair, He is there. If you find yourself in moments of clarity or seasons of confusion, He is there. Even when you enter places you would rather hide, places marked by regret, anxiety, or shame, His presence does not withdraw. Instead, it meets you with the same steady love that has carried you since the beginning. This truth interrupts the lie that invisibility equals abandonment. Even when people fail to notice your pain, God is already in the middle of it, holding what you cannot carry alone. The psalm then shifts from presence to purpose. You are reminded that God formed your inward parts and knitted you together in the hidden place of the womb. These words reveal a creator who works with detail, intention, and care. Your life did not begin as an accident or afterthought. You were crafted with purpose, woven with meaning, shaped with love. Every trait, every gift, every potential was designed long before the world ever offered an opinion about your worth. This is why no moment of rejection has the authority to define you. Your identity originates from a divine intention that cannot be undone by human oversight. The psalmist continues by declaring that God saw his unformed substance and wrote every day of his life before any of them came to be. This truth reframes the narrative of your existence. It means that nothing about your journey surprises God. The seasons that feel chaotic, the detours that confuse you, the chapters that seem uncertain are all held within a larger story written by a loving author. You are not drifting without direction. You are being guided by a wisdom that sees beyond what your eyes can grasp. This assurance does not remove the challenges of life, but it anchors you with a deep, quiet confidence that you are not walking through randomness. You are walking through design. Near the end of the psalm, the tone becomes even more intimate. The psalmist invites God to search his heart, test his thoughts, and lead him in the everlasting way. This is the voice of someone who no longer fears being known. Once terrified of exposure, he now welcomes divine examination because he understands that God's knowledge brings freedom, not shame. This is the profound shift the psalm offers. When you realize you are fully known and deeply loved, you no longer have to hide your struggles or pretend to be stronger than you are. You can bring your whole self before God with trust and honesty, knowing that He desires your healing far more than your perfection. The central message of Psalm 139 is a declaration of identity, presence, and belonging. It speaks to the heart that feels invisible and says, "You are fully seen." It speaks to the soul that feels unwanted and says, "You are intimately valued." It speaks to the mind lost in uncertainty and says, "You are guided with purpose." This psalm is not merely poetry, it is a lifeline. It reveals a God who knows you with a depth that surpasses human understanding, sees you with unwavering compassion, and holds your life with intentional care. Now that the message of the psalm is open before you, we can begin to explore how these divine truths speak directly into the realities you face today. This is where Scripture becomes not only comforting, but transformative, shaping the way you walk through the world and understand your own worth. When the words of Psalm 139 move from ancient poetry into the fabric of your daily life, something begins to shift inside you. The truth that God knows you completely is not meant to remain a comforting idea floating somewhere above your struggles. It is meant to accompany you into the moments when doubt grows louder than hope, when the pressure to appear strong burdens your spirit, and when the quiet ache of feeling unnoticed lingers beneath your routines. The psalm becomes a lens through which you begin to interpret your experiences differently, not with the harshness of self-judgment, but with the gentleness of divine recognition. This is where Scripture steps into the reality of your present story. As you move through your day, you may find yourself carrying silent expectations you never spoke aloud. You try to meet every demand, respond to every need, fulfill every role with grace and composure. Yet beneath that effort lies the unspoken fear that if you falter, you might disappoint someone or lose the little acknowledgement you receive. The spiritual truth of Psalm 139 meets this fear with a simple reminder. Your worth was established long before the world ever evaluated your performance. When you recall that the one who formed you in secret sees every detail of your heart, the pressure to earn approval begins to loosen. You no longer need to strive endlessly for validation because you already possess a recognition more profound than any human affirmation can offer. There are also moments when your thoughts turn against you, when you replay conversations in your mind, searching for mistakes, or question your value because others do not show the gratitude or attention you hoped for. In these moments, the psalm offers a practice of quiet naming. Instead of letting these thoughts spiral without direction, you pause and speak honestly to God. This hurt me. This made me doubt myself. This made me feel small. When you name your inner experience before the one who knows it already, something important happens. You allow your heart to rest in truth instead of assumptions. You shift from hiding your pain to opening it in the presence of a love that does not diminish. Psalm 139 also teaches you to hold your day with an awareness of holy presence. Many people move from task to task with a sense of emptiness, as though life is a series of disconnected moments. But when you remember that God surrounds you in every step, the ordinary becomes sacred. The commute, the quiet moments before sleep, the first breath of the morning, the walk through familiar rooms, even the pauses between responsibilities become invitations to remember that you are not navigating life alone. This awareness does not demand perfection. It simply asks you to let the truth of God's nearness sink into the spaces where you often feel most isolated. There will be times when comparison tries to steal your peace. You may scroll through images of other lives, wondering why theirs seem fuller, brighter, or more affirmed. Yet the spiritual message of the psalm offers a different posture. Instead of competing for visibility, you begin to practice a grounded gratitude. You thank God for the small ways His presence has met you, the quiet strength to endure a difficult day, the unexpected moment of peace, the gentle reminder that you are held. Gratitude becomes a way of reclaiming your attention from the false narratives of inadequacy. It draws your heart toward what is real and meaningful, rather than what is superficial or fleeting. As the truths of the psalm settle more deeply within you, you also learn to protect the spaces that nurture your soul. You recognize the need to create boundaries that honor your emotional and spiritual well-being. This might mean limiting the environments that drain you, reclaiming time for prayer, or allowing yourself to rest without guilt. The awareness that God designed you with intention gives you permission to care for yourself with the same tenderness He extends toward you. Self-care becomes an act of spiritual agreement with the truth that your life holds value. Finally, the psalm encourages you to invite God into your inner world with trust rather than fear. When the psalmist asks God to search his heart, he is not bracing for condemnation. He is opening himself to a love that desires healing and clarity. You can begin to do the same. When confusion rises, you can ask for God's guidance. When fear clouds your decisions, you can pray for His light to lead you. When doubts threaten your sense of identity, you can rest in the assurance that the one who knows you entirely is also the one who walks beside you with unwavering compassion. This is how Psalm 139 becomes more than a passage of scripture. It becomes a daily companion. It teaches you to breathe more gently, to trust more deeply, and to remember that invisibility is never the final truth of your existence. You are known, you are held, you are guided, and these truths extend into every part of your life, offering a quiet strength that does not falter when the world fails to see you. The longing to be seen is not simply a spiritual desire. It is woven into the very design of your humanity. When you feel invisible for too long, something inside you begins to tighten. Your body grows alert, your thoughts become restless, and your heart carries a quiet tension that follows you into every room. This response is not a flaw. It is the natural reaction of a soul created for connection. Psalm 139 speaks directly to this need by revealing a God who meets you in the very places where your mind feels overwhelmed and your emotions feel fragile. As the truth of His presence settles into your inner world, the patterns that once fueled anxiety and self-doubt begin to loosen their grip. Modern understanding of the heart and mind shows that being genuinely seen by someone safe does more than comfort you. It helps regulate your emotional balance. When a person feels witnessed, the nervous system shifts from survival mode into a state of calm. Psalm 139 offers this same experience on a divine level. When you internalize the truth that you are fully known by God, your inner landscape begins to soften. The voice that tells you that you must earn your worth grows quieter. The anxiety that pushes you to overperform loses its authority. The constant scanning for approval begins to fade because you are no longer relying solely on the fragile recognition of others to feel grounded. There is power in naming your emotions before God. This simple act steadies your inner turmoil. When you place your fears, disappointments, and wounds into words, you interrupt the cycle of overthinking that deepens your pain. The psalmist understood this long before psychology gave it language. By inviting God to search his heart, he was choosing honesty over suppression. He was choosing openness over hiding. When you do the same, your mind stops carrying the weight alone. Your spirit begins to breathe again. This kind of emotional transparency creates space for healing, clarity, and peace to emerge. The experience of God's presence also helps reshape the mental patterns that feed insecurity. When you believe you are unseen, you tend to interpret neutral experiences as confirmation of your fears. Silence becomes rejection. Busy people appear uninterested. Lack of response feels like proof that you do not matter. But as the message of Psalm 139 sinks deeper into your awareness, these interpretations begin to shift. You start to view moments more gently. You recognize that many of the hurts you carry were never judgments about your worth, but simply reflections of human limitations. This softening does not deny the pain, but it prevents the pain from becoming your identity. There is also a subtle transformation that happens when you let yourself rest in the truth of being known. Your inner life becomes steadier. You stop demanding impossible perfection from yourself. You stop chasing validation in places unable to provide it. You stop believing that worth can be measured by noise, attention, or applause. Instead, you develop a deeper sense of internal stability. You begin to speak to yourself with compassion. You learn to pause before interpreting the worst. You start to trust your own voice again because it is anchored in a truth that does not shift with circumstance. The nearness of God becomes the grounding force that quiets your inner storm. When life becomes overwhelming, you can place your attention on a single truth: you are held. This simple awareness is enough to slow your breathing, ease the tension in your chest, and bring clarity to your thoughts. Your emotional world is no longer a room you navigate alone. Every fear, every memory, every moment of anxiety is met by the presence of the one who knows you completely. His attention steadies you. His compassion strengthens you. His presence reframes your understanding of yourself. When you let Psalm 139 reach into your emotional and psychological layers, you begin to experience a new kind of wholeness. You understand your inner world with more kindness. You move through your days with more grace. And you begin to see that being fully known by God is not a distant spiritual concept, but a lived reality capable of transforming the way you think, feel, and relate to the world. This prepares your heart for the final arc of the journey. The next step is not only understanding these truths, but allowing them to reshape the way you live, respond, and see your own identity. This is where transformation begins. When the truth of being fully known and deeply valued begins to take root within you, transformation does not arrive in a sudden burst. It unfolds quietly, like morning light slowly filling a darkened room. You begin noticing subtle shifts in the way you carry yourself, the way you speak to your own heart, and the way you interpret the moments that once left you shaken. Psalm 139 becomes more than a source of comfort. It becomes a foundation upon which a new identity is built. An identity that is not shaped by the fleeting recognition of others, but by the steadfast gaze of God. One of the first signs of transformation is a growing steadiness in your inner life. Situations that once made you question your worth lose their power to define you. When someone overlooks you or fails to acknowledge your effort, the sting no longer spirals into self-doubt. You begin to rest in the awareness that invisibility in the eyes of people does not diminish your visibility in the eyes of God. This realization does not make you indifferent. It makes you free, free from the need to prove your existence, free from the pressure to constantly earn approval, free from the fear that silence means insignificance. As this truth strengthens your spirit, you find yourself responding to challenges with more clarity and less panic. You start recognizing that not every negative emotion is a verdict about your value. You allow yourself to pause, breathe, and remember the presence that surrounds you. Instead of rushing to fill emptiness with performance, you turn inward and listen for the gentle assurance of the one who has known you from the beginning. This shift marks the birth of spiritual resilience. You are no longer tossed by every wave of opinion. You become anchored in a love that does not change. Transformation also reveals itself in the way you treat yourself. The harsh inner voice that once criticized your every move begins to soften. You speak with more patience. You show yourself more mercy. You allow yourself to rest without guilt, because you understand that your value is not tied to unending productivity. This internal compassion is not a form of weakness. It is the fruit of knowing that God sees you with tenderness. When you adopt His gaze toward your own life, healing begins to flow into the places you once neglected or judged too harshly. Another part of this transformation is a deeper sense of purpose. As you embrace the truth that every part of your being was crafted with intention, you begin to walk through life with greater awareness. You notice the opportunities to bring light into the world through small acts of kindness, honest conversations, or moments of quiet availability. Your significance no longer depends on grand achievements. It emerges naturally from the authenticity of a heart aligned with God's presence. The peace you carry becomes a gift to others, even when you do not realize it. Relationships also begin to shift. When you stop seeking constant validation, you become more capable of offering genuine connection. You no longer relate from a place of fear or insecurity. You listen more deeply. You love more freely. You become present without needing to prove yourself. And as you allow God to define your worth, you become more discerning about the voices you let into your life. You learn to recognize who nurtures your spirit and who drains it, and you make choices that honor your emotional and spiritual well-being. Perhaps the most profound sign of transformation is the emergence of trust. You begin to surrender the need to understand every detail of your journey. You accept that the one who wrote your days holds your future with wisdom and care. You walk with a growing confidence that even when the path ahead feels unclear, you are not navigating it alone. Trust becomes a quiet strength within you, guiding your steps and calming your fears. This transformation does not erase difficulty, but it changes the way you meet it. You no longer stand as someone begging to be noticed. You stand as someone who knows they are already held. You live with a resilient peace that flows from divine recognition, and from this place, your story continues with new depth, new clarity, and new courage. Now that your heart has walked through this journey, it is time to seal these truths in prayer and lift your spirit into the gentle embrace of the one who knows you fully and loves you without measure. Holy God, you who search the depths of every heart, I lift before you the life of the one listening now. You know the weight they carry, the questions they whisper, and the moments when they have felt unseen. You have walked with them through seasons when their worth was doubted and their presence overlooked, yet never once did your gaze leave them. I ask that in this moment, your nearness becomes unmistakable. Let the truth of Psalm 139 settle into every hidden place within them, reminding them that they are known with tenderness, held with intention, and loved without condition. Speak gently into the places where they feel fragile. Restore confidence where insecurity has taken root. Bring peace to the areas of their life marked by confusion or loneliness. Let your hand rest upon them in a way that brings calm to their thoughts and strength to their spirit. Lead them away from the paths shaped by fear and into the everlasting way shaped by your wisdom and love. May they sense the steady rhythm of your presence guiding them, comforting them, and renewing their identity from the inside out. I pray that every false story spoken over their worth is silenced and replaced by the truth that they were formed with divine intention. Let them walk forward with a heart anchored in your compassion, aware of their purpose and confident in the stability of your love. Surround them with reminders of your faithfulness. Fill their days with quiet confirmations that they do not move through this world unnoticed. Let their life be marked by the peace that comes from being fully known by you. As you carry this prayer into your daily life, I invite you to share in the comments a simple reflection on what part of this message touched your heart today. Your words may bring comfort to someone who is walking through a similar struggle. If you wish to continue receiving reflections that guide you deeper into the Psalms and strengthen your spiritual journey, you are welcome to subscribe and stay connected here. And if this message offered you peace, consider saving it so you can return whenever you need to remember who you are in the eyes of God. May you walk forward with the quiet assurance that you are known, cherished, and guided by the one who called you into being.